Okay, this is a question on the trading profit and loss account. So these are the questions that I researched. So these are the questions here. Now, this is the solution. Now, the first step you take in solving a trading profit and loss account, you will first write the name of the person that owns the account. Looking at here, you can see from the following balances extracted from the book of X and Co. Now, the name of the person that owns this account is X and Co. Now, you write the title, the name of the account, that is Trading Profit and Loss Account for the year ended 31st December 1991. Then don't forget your debit sign and your credit sign. Now you draw a T line, just a T line. Now you make the first one you begin from your question. The first thing you begin from is your opening inventory, that is the stock on 1st January. Stock on the 1st January, that is your opening inventory, and that is 11,000. So you come here, the opening inventory 11,000. Now you go to your add purchases. If you look here, you will see that there's add purchases. Tracing it is 39,000. Then you come here, you write your add purchases 39,000. You still go back to your question, then bring out the add carriage inward. Now looking at the question, add carriage inward, okay, then we have it as 800 naira. Then the add carriage inward will be under the add purchases. Now the add carriage inward 800. Now we have the less returns outward. The less returns outward, we have it here as 500. We have the less returns outward here as 500. But meanwhile, these following steps are how to solve it. If you can't remember it, you can just like cram it. You understand? The following steps. This is how to solve it. Do you understand? So when you finish putting your figures for the add purchases, add carriage inward, and the less returns outward, now the add carriage inward figure is 39,000. The add purchases is 39,000. Now the add carriage inward is 800. Now we have the less returns outward is 500 naira. Now to solve this, we have it as 39,000 plus 800. This add means plus. It's just a nickname in trading profit and loss. And there's no need of you putting the plus here. Once you write add, just know that what you're going to do is to add it together. Now we have the add carriage inward too. So you have this as 39,000 plus 800. Then we have this as less returns outward. Less means reduction, you minus. Then the less returns outward is 500. When you do 39,000 minus plus 800 minus 500. The reason why I put this in bracket is because it's a minus sign. So you're going to less it. In trading profit and loss account, that's what you do. You put it, if you're going to minus it, if you're going to minus the figure, you put the figure in bracket, showing that it is a minus. But I have to put the minus sign here to indicate so that you will not be confused. So 39,000 plus 800 plus minus 500 will give you 39,300. Now you write this still on the same line, 39,300. Now we have gotten for these three steps. Now we have this as opening inventory. This is your 11,000. You then do your 11,000 plus 39,300. That is what is giving you 50,300. Now, this 50,300, you name it as your cost of goods available for sales. I wrote it in short form, AVS. That is cost of goods available. The A stands for available. A and V stand for available, then S stand for sales. You understand? So that is cost of goods available for sale. That is AVS. If there's no space to write it, or you just write cost of goods AVS. A dot, you understand, in just a short form, the lecturer will understand what you wrote. Then we have this as 50,300. Now we will then input our less closing stock. Our less closing stock now is 25,000. Looking at the question, the less closing stock here, that is the stock on 31st December 1991 was valued at 25,000. That is 25,000 here. So this cost of goods available for sales, you won't see the figure in the question. No, it's based on the addition of the opening stock, then plus this figure. That is what will give you your cost of goods available for sales. Then you have your less closing stock is 25,000. That is it. The stock on 31st December 1991 was valued at 25,000 naira. Now, if you do your cost of goods available for sales minus your less closing stock, that is what will give you 25,300 as your cost of goods sold. Now, after you minusing the 25,000, less closing stock means the stock at the end of the year that remains at the end of the year. You understand? Now, minus the cost of goods that is available for the employee to sell. You understand? So that is what it means. That is the 50,300 minus 25,000. Mind you, this is a less. You should know it's a minus sign. You can also put it in brackets. Yes, but I didn't put mine. It's due to I already know how the step is being followed. So that's why I didn't put the bracket sign. So we have this as cost of goods sold is when you minus this 50,300 from 25,000, you'll be getting 25,300. Okay, now you come over to here to the credit side. Now your sales in the question, let's look for sales. Okay, this is sales. Now the sales here is 60,000. Okay, now this is your sales, 60,000. Now we have this as we'll then input the less return inwards. We'll input this as less return inward. Mind you, we had the less returns outward in the debit side, but in the credit side we'll put the less return inward. The less return inwards here is here. Less return inwards, that is 1,300. Okay, less returns outward is for this place. Okay, that is 500 is for here. But for this credit side, the less return inward is 1,300. Okay, so when you do this, you have this at 60,000 minus 1,300. You'll be getting the sum of 58,700. Okay, now that is not all. After you get your 58,700, you will come back to the cost of goods sold and minus the 58,700 minus 25,300. That will give you the sum of 33,400. Okay, that's now your gross profit. Okay, let me go back and repeat. When you minus 58,700 from 25,300, that is your cost of goods sold, you'll be getting the sum of 33,400. That is your gross profit. Now your gross profit, we have this as 23,300. okay, the 58,700 is what you got in the credit side. Okay, now if you do 25,300 plus 33,400, you'll be getting the sum of 58,700. okay, so you can see that the answer here and on the debit side it's corresponding. Now you bring this down as 58,700, then you bring this answer, you just draw a Z. okay, you bring this answer over to here, that is 58,700. okay, now your answer is corresponding. If your answer isn't corresponding, that means there's a mistake somewhere, so your answer needs to correspond to each other. Now moving over to the expenses. Now the expenses here is, now you move over to this is called the profits and loss. okay, this is the profit. From the expenses down is called the profit and loss. Why this aspect is only called the trading. This is only called the trading. All this is only called the trading. okay, now this is called the profits and loss. Now we have this as wages. Wages over here is 2,800. 2,800, this is it. The commission in your question, commission over here is 800. Now we have this as 800. Trade expenses, they're all expenses. Trade expenses, we have this as here 200. Now 200. We have the stationaries too, 450 in your question. Office features 1,000. Tent and taxes 1,100. Insurance 700. You can see it over here. You can see the tent and taxes. okay, so it's all in your question. Now we have this as carriage outward 1,450 in your question. Interest on capital 700, still in your question. Now let's look for interest on capital over here. Interest on capital. Now this interest on capital, you might say it's not an expenses, but it is an expenses. Why? Because interest on capital is just like you paying a rent on salaries. okay, whereby you borrow a sum of 30,000 CFR, 30,000 naira, sorry, to begin a business. okay, now you then as you borrow the money, they tell you, okay, the interest on it is, maybe you'll be paying the interest. When you're paying back, you pay back to the person 700 naira. Do you understand? So now that is the interest we're talking about. Now, because you own the capital, yes, but you're still bringing out money to pay back, and some addition of money also. Do you understand? As the interest. okay, so that's why it's an expenses. okay, that's why it's an expenses. That's why it's recorded in the expenses. okay, now it's an expense. Now you calculate. okay, then you come over to the gross profit. The gross profit, you write it as gross profit brought down. That is this gross profit broke down. That is 33,400. okay, now in the format they wrote discount received. That is if it was added. okay, but since it was not added in the question, that's, we don't have a discount received over here. So if you add all this together, you'll be getting the sum of 9,000. okay, 9,000. Now if you, to get the net profit, you will do 33,400 minus 9,000. you'll be getting the sum of 24,200. okay, when you calculate all this together, including, okay, let me repeat, when you calculate all this together, you'll be getting the sum of 9,000. Now you come over here, 33,400 as your gross profit brought down minus the 9,000. It is not written. Now the answer you get will give you the net profit. That is 24,200. That is your net profit. Now to know if it's a net profit or net loss, now when you calculate the expenses, you find out that your total expenses was 9,000. Okay, now your gross profit brought down was 33,400. You see, you have a profit. The expenses was just a little expenses. Now that's why I put it as net profit. Assuming the expenses was much, now it will be a net loss. Okay, but now it's a net profit. Now 22,200. Then if you sum everything up together, you'll be getting the sum of 33,400. Okay, you can see it, 33,400, 33,400. So that's all for trading profit and loss account.